Hi, and welcome to the Health Begins with Mom show. I am Dorit Palvanov, your host. On this podcast, I will share insights and interviews on health, parenting, and explore the question of what does it take to thrive as women, wives, and mothers. Now, let's get going with today's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Health Begins with Mom podcast. This is Dorit Palvanov, your host. Today, we are talking about self-love and in particular, how to raise children to love themselves. I'm super excited about this. So I'm chatting with Stacy Hoffer, who is a director, teacher, and certified self-love coach at the Path of Self-Love School. She teaches Raising Children to Love Themselves, which is a 6-part online course for parents on modeling and guiding their children to have a strong foundation of self-love. After earning her master's in leadership development and working in corporate America as a change management consultant, Stacy received her coaching certification from the International Coaching Academy and founded Soul Alignment Living. Through the path of self-love and her own coaching programs, Stacy has guided hundreds of women to trust their inner wisdom, speak their truth, deepen their self-love, and live in more alignment with their heart and soul. She is a contributing author in the best-selling book, Inspiration for a Woman's Soul, Choosing Happiness, and has been modeling and teaching her 2 children how to love themselves for the past 10 years. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Hi, Stacy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So before we dive deeper into today's conversation, I would like to start by asking you, what are you loving about being a mom right now?
Great question. What I love about being a mom is, so I have, my boys are 12 and 14. And what's amazing, I think, about being a mom in general is that whenever I'm like, okay, now I understand my kids are 2 and 4 and I totally get 2 and 4, right? And then they get older and then you're like, well, I don't know anything about 6 and 8, right? Or I don't know anything about 10 and 12. And so I'm loving watching my children turning into teenagers and having them explore life and having the connection with them where I get to have conversations with them as teenagers or almost a preteen. And I'm finding the conversations so fascinating. You know, I've never been able to talk at this depth with my children, and it's only going to increase as they get older.
I love that. I cannot wait. Honestly. I feel I'm in this very, very strange place now because I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and almost 2-year-old. And so with my 8-year-old, and they're all girls, by the way, with my 8-year-old, it's, I'm getting there. And I feel like she is more she's always been very mature emotionally. So I can talk to her, deeper. But with my 6-year-old and my baby, obviously, it's like, I feel like this divide, So here I am talking, having deep conversations with my older, but then I have these 2 who are still very much, like babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us the story of how you got to the School of Self-Love, and how was the School of Self-Love for Kids born?
Yeah. So I've been working with Christina Rilo, who is the founder of the Path of Self-Love School. I've been working with her for almost a decade. It started in 2009 when she was launching Self-Love Day, which is on February 13th. And I started working with her. I was leaving my corporate job. I was really involved with social media, and we connected, and I had no idea the path that I was about to get onto. And we've just been working together. We've been building self-love offerings together. I'm the director of the Love Club, which is it's a 12-month program based on Christina Rilo's best-selling book, Madly in Love with Me. And I've always had this knowing in my heart that I am here on the planet at this time to support moms. And so kind of the opportunity, like the opportunity came where we were feeling into what is the world needing right now? And as I went into, my process, what was very clear was that not only did women and girls need to learn how to love themselves, but the importance of moms learning to love themselves and model self-love for their children. And moms are the heart of the home.
Yes.
And so that really, from that place of the heart, raising children to love themselves was born.
I love that. This is so aligned with what it is that I'm creating here. And my podcast is called Health Begins with Mom.
I know, I love that.
Yeah, I totally agree that it does begin with us, because we are the heart of the home. So today we're talking about teaching children to love themselves. And so I don't know, I think, and I think you also think the same, but children love themselves naturally, don't they? So why do we need to teach them self-love?
Love that. So we just had a class called How Children Learn to Love Themselves, right? And the very first sentence of that class is, here's the great news. Children are born loving themselves. They are born as love. They are love. And then what happens is as they are on the planet for some time, right, and as they start to grow older, they're around older people who've been on the planet for longer, who've kind of learned some of the ropes and have been infused with some of the fear and judgment and pressure and blame and shame. And slowly, if it's not, right, if we're not intentionally raising children to who love themselves, to continue to love themselves, they will slowly have the potential to slowly forget, right? And so the image I always have is like maybe even like your 2-year-old, right, who's like coming into the world like, look at me, look at me, look at me dance, mommy, look at me dance, look at me dance. And the mom might be like, oh, that's amazing. And then she goes out into the world and says to someone else, look at me dance, look at me dance. And someone's like, that's not dancing. Who do you think you are? What? Right? And so all of a sudden this heart open, arms wide open little girl all of a sudden maybe starts to clinch in, right? And starts to learn these patterns of it's not safe to be seen. Starts to learn these patterns of, oh, I'm not enough. And then if we, again, we're not intentional about it, there's the potential to forget that we are love and that they are love.
Right. I love how in the school of self-love, you call it the love crack, right?
Yes.
So I've seen the replay of this training that you've done together with Christina Rilo. And I love the story that you've shared about your son's when your son's heart broke for the first time and how you've handled it. So do you mind sharing that here too?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what story I shared. So we'll see what comes up. So I was also going to talk about that moment that the little girl's dancing and someone tells her that it's stupid or whatever it is. Right? She can get a love crack in her heart. And so as children get older, right? So normally around 6, 7, 8, when they're kind of elevating their awareness, they get love cracks. And everyone has love cracks. Everyone gets love cracks, right? We can't be with our children all the time, and love cracks happen. And the beauty around teaching our children to love themselves is when their hearts crack, right? So it's like the hearts crack and fear starts to ooze in, or judgment, or pressure, or shame, or blame, or self-criticism, self-hate, self-loathing. In that moment, as parents, we can help our children fill those cracks with love. So they don't have to wait until they're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 to realize they have love cracks, and then go back and try to repair and love on those cracks. So let me think about a story about my son's love cracks.
I think you shared the story of him going to a party or something. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So my my son was graduating from elementary school. And the last day of school, one of the boys had a party, invited, pretty much everybody in the whole grade to go. And my son arrived, and him and the boy was having the party, and his friend stood there and in the front door and told my son that he was not allowed in. And it was very shocking to my son. They were actually friends. Didn't understand, thought he was joking, and said, "You're not allowed in. Go home. If you come in, you're going to ruin the whole party. You can't come in." And basically shut the door on my son, and my son wasn't allowed in. And back then he didn't have a phone, right? So he couldn't even call me. So then it was like increased in fear. I finally figured out where he was. I picked him up, and his heart was cracked wide open.
Wow.
He was so confused. He was so hurt, and he started to just think about, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And, we drove home, and I let him talk, and we got home, and I just held space for him. I just allowed him to feel all those things that he was feeling, to let the inner critic rant and get it out of his body so it didn't sit inside of his body, and let him feel what he needed to feel, and then held him and did a visualization of filling his heart with love and reminding him of his worth, of his value, of his own compassion, of his gifts. And that this really had nothing to do with my son. And then we took it one step further, which was, I was encouraging him to actually send compassion to this boy who didn't allow him in. My son wasn't quite able to do that, but we still did it. We beamed love to this other boy who, for whatever reason, needed to feel like he could not, not to include my son, and just loving on this boy for whatever was going on with him that led him to make that choice.
Right. So I love the story so much. But I mean, there's a part of me who is thinking that obviously love cracks are inevitable. And so there is wisdom, otherwise they would not happen. So can you talk a little bit about the wisdom of these love cracks and what are they teaching us about ourselves?
Yeah, great question. So with the love cracks, I would think it's really about the love cracks reminding us of the tenderness of our own hearts. Right? And so I can't give you like a direct answer, because everyone's wisdom is different, based on their own experience. Right? So someone might have a love crack of being abandoned. And so whenever that love crack is triggered of being abandoned, they have the opportunity in that moment to choose self-love or to choose self-sabotage, right? So for my son, right, so if he has the love crack of being rejected, right, which he doesn't because we healed it, but if someone had the love crack of being rejected, throughout life, that love crack will be triggered. And so the wisdom is knowing what those love cracks are. So when they get triggered, you can be conscious enough and aware enough to slow down and make a self-loving choice versus a self-sabotaging choice. So often when we're self-sabotaging, self-neglecting, self-sacrificing. We're making choices based on old patterning or old stories that don't serve us. So the wisdom around love cracks is to be able to identify them and to pour love into them at any age so they don't run your life.
Yeah. Oh, that's big. That's big. I know because from the work that I do with moms, they would most of the times they would come to me because they have some physical symptoms. So like imbalanced hormones or gut issues, or, they just want to learn how to be healthier. And so almost 100% of the time I would end up coaching them on loving themselves and being compassionate to themselves, and just being kinder to themselves. Like, this is an inevitable part of my work because it's so connected, through, I call this the process of embodiment, through learning
Yes.
about your body, your physical body and your physical symptoms. Then, once you heal that, then you must go into the deeper realm, which is healing those love cracks.
Yes,
So yeah,
beautiful. I
I
mean,
love that.
self-love is an embodied practice,
Yeah.
right? Our love our head, love our mind, love our brain, but they can only take us so far. And self-love really is a physical, embodied practice. And self-love isn't about, the question isn't, do I love myself? Don't I love myself? It's not a yes or no. It's elevating your self-awareness, which self-awareness is one of the 10 components of self-love, to know where am I strong in self-love and where am I weak in self-love. And self-love also is not about being perfect, right? So for me, my trigger is food, right? And so when I don't get enough sleep and I'm not taking care of myself, like my go-to is to eat unhealthy food, because that was my conditioning unconsciously growing up, was that I didn't have an outlet for my emotions, and so I ate.
Mm.
And that patterning has been with me for decades. And in that moment, I choose as often as I can self-loving choices instead, right? I get sunshine, I go for a walk, I meditate, but it doesn't mean that in some moments I don't choose the unhealthy food, right? And so self-compassion, it's not about, self-love is not about being perfect. It's about remembering to choose self-loving choices when we can and being compassionate with ourselves no matter what. Being compassionate and kind and gentle and understanding with ourselves for our humanness.
Right. And so I'm also curious to, because I know people are thinking this too. How is this process of self-love, the embodied self-love, how is it different than narcissism?
Well, thank you for asking. So let's talk about the definition of self-love. So what self-love is not. So self-love is not selfish, and self-love is not narcissistic, right? So self-love, if you think about it, and again, it's like an embodied practice. So if you're listening to this, what I invite you to do is close your eyes, and if you want to, put your hand on your heart, and think about a child in your life that that you love, that maybe it's the reason why you listen to this podcast, right? So who's the child or the children, and have him or her, them in mind, and just beam love to this child. Just sending and beaming love, compassion and kindness, adoration, how much you want your children or this child to take care of themselves and love themselves and express themselves, and to know what their heart and soul desires are, and to have the courage to be authentically whoever it is that they are. And just send them so much love. Now imagine this child picking up a mirror and having all of that love now hitting the mirror and beaming back to you, and send that same amount of love to yourself, to all parts of your body, even the parts of you that are hard to love. And just send all that kindness and patience and understanding, unconditional love back to yourself. And just notice. Notice that there's a difference between beaming love to your children, taking that same love energy and beaming it back to yourself. Is it hard to receive? Are you trying to deflect it? Are you able to just breathe it in? Self-love is a practice that we haven't been taught to do. But self-love is love. At the bottom of it, it's, at the end of the day, it's love. It's the same love you would give your children, that you would give your friends, your family, the world, the earth, the same love. And you're also including yourself. So you're taking that love and you're putting it and sending it back and streaming it back to yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that walkthrough. I needed that today. So in that workshop that I've watched the replay, you guys spoke about the 10 branches of self-love. Can you talk a little bit about them?
Yeah. Just from the sake of time, I think I'll focus on 6. So there's 10 branches of self-love, and we found that there are 6 that when you cultivate these 6 branches of self-love in children, children will grow and grow a strong foundation of self-love. And so at a high level, they're self-trust, self-care, self-compassion, self-empowerment, self-respect, and self-esteem. And so I'd love to talk a little. You want me to talk about all of them?
Yeah. Well, whatever you feel that is most of, have the most value to the audience.
Yeah, well, I'll just touch on them because a lot of people don't know what self-love is. And so I think this is it's like an umbrella of all these other aspects, and they're all woven together. So the first is self-trust, right? So if parents do nothing else but strengthen their children's self-trust, that will be enough. Self-trust is the ability for your children to trust themselves, stay true to themselves, and follow their own inner guidance or intuition, no matter what. And so as they are living in this world as children and then as grown adults, being able to know what their true north is. We live in a world where conventional wisdom tells us what we should do. Peer pressure tells us what we should do. Societal stress, the chaos, the politics, it goes on and on and on. We live in this information age where we're almost being conditioned that we don't know what's best for ourselves. So we have to look outside of ourselves for someone else to tell us. This is how I was raised. I was raised what I call like conventional wisdom dysfunction, right? Just like, what did conventional wisdom tell me to do? They tell me to go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, get a bigger job, da, 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 da. And then I woke up one day being like, this is so far away from who I truly am. And so if we can really cultivate and really knowing who our children are and celebrating their uniqueness and inviting them to continue to trust their inner wisdom over fear and pressure, then you're giving them a path to live their most authentic, best life. The next one is self-care. So self-care is treating your body, right, as sacred and taking care of it and accepting it and nourishing it, right, loving your body and accepting your body. It's also about making sure that you as a mom check in with yourself every day and ask yourself, what is it that I need today? Right? So part of raising children to love themselves is modeling self-love. And one of the best ways to do this is around self-care.
Yeah.
Right? And so an easy practice for moms is for every day in the morning, waking up, closing your eyes, and just asking yourself, what is it that I need to receive today? And really allowing your inner wisdom to guide you. And if you don't have a relationship with your inner wisdom yet, you might not hear anything, so you can make it up. We're practicing yourself, what is it that I need to receive? And then taking the self-loving action to give it to yourself. And then you can practice asking your children, what do they need? Oftentimes when I have a child who is having a tantrum, there's something underneath there that they need. And so trying to connect underneath whatever's going on at the surface, figuring out what their heart needs. The next one is self-compassion, which really is the antidote for negative self-talk, self-bullying, self-criticizing, which is all around learning to be and practicing being kind and gentle, patient, and understanding with yourself. So as a mom, noticing when you're not being kind, when you're being harsh, when you're being critical, when you're putting pressure on yourself, noticing those moments, and then practicing sending self-compassion to yourself, kindness and patience and understanding, knowing that you're doing the best you can. And then again, once the moms embody it, sharing it with their children. And the fourth one is self-empowerment, which we kind of talked about. It's really about knowing for your children, knowing who they are at their core and cultivating the strength and confidence and courage to stand in their power and to be true to themselves no matter what.
Yeah.
And self-respect, what I love about self-respect, it's such an important component of self-love to teach at a young age, which is around choosing to only have loving and respectful relationships. And so it's elevating our children's awareness around what it means to be treated with respect and love. And so we have tools that we teach parents and that we teach the children around, is this a loving, respectful relationship? That's not to say that, friends aren't going to fight or there's not going to be disagreements, but how do you really know that this is loving and respectful to who you are at your core? And then the last tool that we teach is around self-esteem, which is really it's very connected to self-empowerment, standing in their power and celebrating their gifts. So this is all about really going on a scavenger hunt to name and claim your children's gifts. They're authentic gifts. This is not about being gifted at all. This is about noticing what your own gifts are, noticing what your children's gifts are, and celebrating those gifts and weaving those gifts into their everyday life. And often our gifts are what makes us unique.
Right.
So as children can often think that their greatest gifts are their greatest weakness because it's what makes them different. And so celebrating what makes them different while also, holding space for them that they're human just like we are. And as humans, we all have that need to belong, right? And so working with your children on how do you celebrate your unique gifts and how do you embrace that needing to belong and that balance, I think really middle school and high school is all about fitting in and still owning your unique, authentic self.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Can you just breeze through the other four?
Yeah, so you can see they all kind of weave together. So self-awareness um, is essential for all aspects of this, right? Being aware of your gifts, being aware of negative self-talk, being aware of when your inner wisdom is talking, when your loving truth is talking, and when what we call our inner mean girls or inner mean guys are talking, right? Being aware that, oh my God, I'm really beating myself up right now. That's my inner mean girl. That's my inner mean guy. What's the truth underneath that, and being able to connect to that. Another one is self-acceptance. So self-acceptance is accepting all of who you are is whole and complete, right? And so the practice around self-acceptance is loving the parts of you that are hard to love. Loving, for me, right, loving my stomach, loving my extra fat around my stomach. And I can love it and want to take self-empowering action to do something about it. But I'm not going to wait until I lose 20 pounds to love myself. I'm going to accept myself for who I am now. And then if I choose to take empowered action towards that, it's both and. Another one is self-pleasure. So children have this down, right? They want to play and play and play and have as much joy as they want. It's the moms who often can elevate their self-pleasure. So moms do everything for everyone and often put themselves last, right? And so in the Path of Self-Love School, we believe in no self-sacrifice, no self-neglect, and doing what you need to do to shift out of self-sabotage. And so one of the things for moms is to increase self-pleasure. And self-pleasure is creating space in your life for things that fill you up, for things that nourish your soul, for things that make you laugh. Like, what do you love to do? And really checking in and how often are you actually doing these things, and taking a stand for yourself to weave in more fun and more joy into your life.
And then I think one more.
Yes, one more. Well, I'm trying to think, I have to think of what that one is. So, but underneath all of them, underneath these 10 branches are the roots of self-love. I'll talk about that. So the root of self-love is self-worth. Valuing yourself, knowing your worth, knowing that nothing outside of you defines your worth, that you are worthy and valuable, and that you are a gift simply because you are you. And there's no one else like you, and that you are worthy of your heart and soul desires.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. 100%. I also wanted to ask you, what's the best age to start teaching this to children? Because I know, I mean, like, I don't know, is it appropriate for kids who are like toddlers? Is the language different?
Yeah, so the language is definitely different. What I would say is you can always, regardless of how old your children are, regardless if you're even pregnant, you can always begin to strengthen your own inner foundation, to strengthen your own self-love. And so how you're going to be interacting, right, with a 3-year-old is different than how I might act with my 14-year-old. But how I model self-love to my 3-year-old and how I model self-love to my 14-year-old really doesn't change, right? So wherever you are and wherever your children are, to start with practicing self-love for yourself, because our children watch us, our children listen to us, They notice every time if you look in the mirror and make a comment about
about your looks or
about your
your
look,
belly.
about your belly, about your hair. Mine was my mom always looked in the mirror and said she hated her neck. So I have to remind my mind that I don't hate my neck, because my go-to is that I hate I hate my neck, right? That my neck isn't as skinny as everyone else's, and then we're conditioned. We're conditioned. And the good news is that we can make self-loving choices and change our thoughts. And it's so much easier if we are getting that modeled in our home, right? So starting with practicing self-compassion. And then, right, and so like part of what we do in raising children to love themselves, it's kind of like this flow. So no matter what age your children are, right, even if they're 2 years old, is to starting even with one branch, right? Self-compassion, right? Start with self-awareness of when you're being critical or putting extra pressure on yourself, being harsh with yourself, and starting to practice being kind and patient and loving to yourself instead. And then the next step, regardless of what age your children are, is to be able to say it out loud, right? The example I use is I'm not the best cook in the world. And, right, so I make a recipe, which is very challenging for me, and it all blows up in smoke. And saying, well, I did the best I could, right? Almost I've been making light of it. I did the best I could instead of completely beating myself up in front of my children, right? And then the third step is when your children are being hard on themselves. This could be age 3, or age 14, age 25, right? Having a conversation with them, using the language of kind, gentle, patient, understanding with them, weaving that language into your household and into your life at any age. As they get older, it will be the language that they know. They will grow up living inside this language. So when they're 2 years old, speaking self-loving language, right, is it going to like get rid of their temper tantrums? Maybe not. But over time, they're going to be growing up in this world where they know self-worth and self-compassion and self-esteem, the real meaning of self-esteem, is valuable.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the School of Self-Love for kids. I know it's 6 weeks long, right? It's an 100% online course.
Yeah, so it is an online course. So every week you will receive a teaching. So we have the class live, so you can attend live and take the class live with myself. I'll be teaching it with other people around the world, or based on your schedule and your own flexibility, you can take it kind of self-study. So instead of attending live, you'll receive the teaching videos and all the worksheets and all the materials. We'll send it to you over email. You have access it to online, and you can watch it, at your own pace.
Okay. And after the program is over, is it lifetime access?
Yes. So you will have lifetime access to all of the teaching videos, all of the worksheets, all the meditations, all the tools and practices that we share, we have inquiries, we have weekly practices. So this isn't about homework. This isn't about kind of adding to-dos to your life. This is about giving you really simple tools to weave into your life.
I love that. And when does the program start?
So the course starts on May 1st. So on May 1st is the first class, and so we'll be having a live class. And then if you can't attend the live class, then on the May 2nd, you'll receive the first teaching.
Okay, so it's May 1st, 2018, for those of you who don't listen in real life. Yeah, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about the flow. So we're going to be, every week or every part of the course, so if you're taking it self-study, you don't have to take it week by week, but there's 6 parts, and we're going to really dive deep into each of those 6 aspects that I talked about and really begin to identify first in the embodiment, right? So what does it feel like to have self-compassion? What does it
Right.
feel like to know what your gifts are? And then we're going to weave in language, talking about the language. So I use self-compassion as an example. We'll be doing that with all 6 branches. We're going to be taking kind of intuitive assessments, right? Where are you weak in each of these branches? Where are you strong? Where do you need to strengthen your self-love? And where are you already strong? And then also doing an assessment with the children in your life, right? Where are they already strong? Because they are already strong in many aspects of self-love. And then where are they weak and where do you need to focus? And then we'll have tools and practices, simple tools that you can weave into your life. And we'll be checking in, right? So we'll be checking in once a week on what are you noticing? Like, how are these tools working? Do you need to change the language, right? So different different words have power, and so you might need to tweak the language a little bit so it resonates with you and with your children. And um, and then we're going to be doing modeling. So we're going to be daring all of the parents and really it's for parents, it's for grandparents, it's for anyone who has children in their life that they want to share this medicine of self-love with. And yeah, so it's very hands-on, it's very practical, it's fun, it's tangible, and I'm going to be available every week to be teaching it. After the 6 weeks, I'm going to be having kind of like Q&A calls every week. So if you're taking the self-study, you'll always be able to have access to me to ask me questions, to kind of laser coaching as you move on with your own self-love path.
I love that. Thank you so much, Stacy, for coming on the show. This show has 2 parts to it. So the first part is when we actually talk about what it is that you offer. And the second part is about giving the listeners an opportunity to maybe dive deeper into your own personal life. So if that's okay with you, I would love to ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is, this show is all about inspiring mothers to thrive as women, as wives, and as mothers. And I like to call it being a goddess in your life. So I'm curious to know, how are you being a goddess in your own life? How do you take care of yourself, your soul, your body? What are some of your non-negotiables?
I love that. I love that. Oh, okay. Well, first I'll share that. So for several years now, I have been studying the divine feminine and embodying the divine feminine and feminine wisdom that lives inside of each of us, right? And there's different ways to access our inner feminine wisdom. And so what I do is really simple for me, but is challenging for other people, which is spending time each day in stillness and living my life. And you might even hear it in my voice because I speak slowly, is slowing everything down, right? So what I do, and I've been practicing this, and it's also one of my gifts that I used to think was a weakness. I used to think being, speaking slowly and moving slowly was a weakness. Now I know it's my strength. But what I do is I slow everything down because we live in a world that is so fast, changing so often, that if we're not aware, we will get swept out to sea. Right? We will just go with that current and we won't have control. And so that's what I do. I meditate every day, but even in the moment, someone asks me a question, you probably heard it on this podcast, I pause. People are very uncomfortable with pauses, so I recommend if you're uncomfortable with pauses to just explore that, but to listen, right? So what I do is instead of reacting from my mind, I pause and listen to my inner wisdom and my inner guidance and respond from my heart. So I practice spending more time in my heart and allowing my heart to guide me than reacting from my head and letting what I think I'm supposed to do guide me.
I love that. Second question. In one sentence, what is your vision for your life? What are you creating? What is your life's purpose?
My life purpose is to help women access their inner wisdom, access their heart knowing, their heart and soul desire, and to teach them the tools to live in more alignment with their heart and soul. And I continue to do that myself, checking in with my heart and my inner wisdom so I can live in alignment with my heart and soul, so I can be living my purpose, so I don't get caught up in following someone else's dream.
Yeah. I love that. Third question. What advice does your now mom self would have given to your pre-mom self?
Okay, I'm gonna follow my own advice and listen and check in with my inner wisdom. So enjoy the pause. What I would tell my pre-mom self is to stay true to yourself, even if it means disappointing another.
Yes. Oh, that's big. Okay, so complete that sentence. Moms should invest in themselves because
Moms should invest in themselves because if they don't, they will become depleted. They will be living on empty, and they won't be able to give to their children, to their sacred work. You won't be able to do whatever it is that they uniquely are here to do.
yeah, I love that. Thank you. I like to keep it real and show listeners that even though someone is an expert in one area, they might be struggling with other things. So, what are some of your current challenges as a woman, wife, or a mother?
I would say my current challenge is creating space for my own for a sacred partnership, right, with my husband, creating sacred space. It usually is at the, I'm putting, creating space for sacred partnership.
Love that. I love that. Thank you. Okay, last question. Not every woman is a mother, but every woman is a daughter. So, how do you think your relationship with your mom helped to shape who you are today?
Great questions. So, I think she helped me. So, she's my relationship with my mom growing up gave me space to start looking inward, right? So, my inward journey began when I was growing up and living in a family that didn't really talk about emotions. There wasn't a lot of space, and so the benefit of that was that I began to look inward and increasing my own self-awareness. And then the other piece is that my mom, like as soon as I became a mom, she's called me every single day of my life since I became a mom. And she always would say, no matter what phase I was, this too will pass. This too will pass. This too will pass. And so she just kind of reminds me that no matter what it is that I'm going through, it's not going to stay that way, and to have perspective.
I love that. Stacy, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the beautiful work that you do with women, with families, with kids. Before I let you go, can you just share where people can find you, where they can connect with you, maybe your social media handles? Now is the time for that.
Yeah, great. So you can find me at stacyhoffer.com, STACEYHOFFER, and you can connect with the school at pathofselflove.org. And if you're interested in the school, our social media handle is Path of Self Love, and I am Evolving Stacy on social media.
Evolving Stacy. Yeah, so I'll have all the links below in the show notes. Again, Stacy, thank you so much. It was such a fun interview, and you know what I'm taking from this interview is really to pause, because I am usually a fast speaker, a fast talker, but I can see the quality of the answers are coming out so much deeper and wiser and better when you really take the time to just pause. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Health Begins with Mom show. I love hearing from you, so please post your comments and questions over at healthbeginswithmom.com/podcast. If you love the show, please share it on social media and in your real life with other moms who might enjoy this content. And if you have a burning question or topic you'd like me to hit on the show, just drop me a line at dorit@healthbeginswithmom.com. And if you love this show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review, and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Much love and many blessings.